Hey, so good to be here. Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming to this talk. Thank you, Tejas, for that beautiful introduction. I miss hanging out with you. I hope I get to see you in a conference soon. So, what are we talking about today? I am going to talk about Canvas API, and what we're going to do is use HTML Canvas to create some animations on the page. And what we're going to do is what better animation to create in springtime than bubbles. So this is what we're going to create. We've got 40 minutes to create this, and I have got no slides today, so I'm only going to do live code. If things break, I've got my cheat sheet here, so I'll be looking over here in case there's like some problems going on. But let's get started. So today we're just going to use plain JavaScript and HTML to create this animation. And what we want to do is create this animation using an HTML element called Canvas. And I've opened the documentation here so you can have a look at it. But basically, we'll be using the Canvas element and rendering this bubble animation using just Canvas and the APIs that Canvas provides us. So this is the live code. If you want, you can set up your code pen or your code editor and start coding with me. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is set up our canvas. I've already done that here. So all you need to do in HTML is write a canvas element, provide it an ID, and then that's all you need. Now you'll see that I put text inside this canvas element. This text actually will not be rendered. This is a fallback text. In case your canvas element does not get rendered, this is the text that gets rendered, a canvas with bubbles. And so you want to use this text to provide information about what the canvas is about in case the canvas doesn't get rendered. Okay, and then for CSS, all I have done is remove the margin because CodePen kind of comes with the default margin, and I've added background. That's all we're going to need. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is, in my JavaScript, I want to get access to the canvas element that I just created. For that, I am just going to use get element by ID. I already provided an ID of canvas, so that's what I'll use. And then if I switch to my documentation here, you'll see that the first thing I want to do is actually get the canvas rendering context. And basically what canvas rendering context does is provide us the APIs that are used to draw elements or animations on the page. And so anything that we'll be doing will actually be using the context, which is given to us by Canvas, that get context duty. And so I'm just going to copy that here and move it over here. And this is I'm just going to rename this to context. Hopefully the font size is big enough, but if it's not, please let me know in the chat. Okay, so I've got access to context. And now you see like I'm not rendering anything on the page. You won't see anything yet. So for that, what we can do is provide a background to, instead of providing a background of black to our body, let's move it to canvas so we can actually see that canvas gets rendered. Provide a black canvas background, give it an ID. Okay, so something is rendered, so that's great. So that means our canvas is getting rendered. Now what we want to do is maybe like, let's make this canvas take up the whole space. So for that, we'll do canvas dot width equals the width of the entire window, which is window or inner width, and same for height. Okay, this should take up the whole space. There we go. So now our canvas is set up and we can start making some cool animations. So what we want to do is, I'll show you in this bubbles, where basically have, if you'll see, we have like these circles on the page and they're kind of like going around the width and height of the canvas. So that's what we want to do. We want to first like start creating circles on the page. And anytime I click, I'll get like more circles being created on the page. And we're doing some cool animation. We can do animations in JavaScript by request animation frame. So that's what we'll be using. So how can I create circles on this canvas? The canvas context actually provides us a method called arc, which is what we can use to create a circle. So in the arc method, it accepts a few parameters. And basically what you want to provide it is an X and Y, which is the center of where we want to start creating our arc, the radius of the arc, like how big the circle needs to be, the start angle and the end angle. Because we're creating a full circle, for us, it's going to be 0 to maths times 2 pi. And actually, the documentation has a really good example of drawing a full circle, which is over here. So we're just going to copy that. Update our context. Okay. You still don't see anything rendered on the canvas yet, and that's because we're actually rendering in black color. So let's provide it a stroke style of maybe red, and then move our stroke here. There you go. So we've got a circle on the screen. Cool. So now we have circles. We can start animating these circles. I'm going to create a method here called draw and move this circle within this. And then I'm going to provide X and Y, which is the center of the circle, X and Y. And radius, we can keep it as 50, but we can also change it later. So now what I want to do is every time I click, I want to draw a circle at the point that I clicked. And so for that, all I need to do is add an event listener of click. And then I'm going to call a circle, a function called handle draw circle, and define that function here. And then in this function, I basically want to draw my circle at X and Y coordinate, or let's call it A and B so we don't get confused. And then the A and B actually comes from wherever I clicked, like the coordinates of where I clicked. So that's going to be event.x and event.b.y. Okay, at this point, all I've done is added an event listener of click and added my handle draw circle, which sets up X and Y where I should be clicking. So then I call my draw function, which just creates a circle wherever I clicked. Sweet. So I've got circles on the screen. Cool. Now what we want to do is move these circles. So to move the circle, you'll notice here that we have this arc method that accepts X and Y, right? If we change this X and Y slowly and really fast, like if we may move it just a little bit and on every animation frame, it'll look like as though the circle is moving. So if we gave this X plus 1 and Y plus 1, it looked like the circle is moving just a little bit on every animation frame. So that's what we're going to do now. To make it move a little bit, what we can do is actually use an animate function and call request animation frame in that function. So we're going to create a function, animate, and call request animation frame, animate again, and then call animate. And then I'm just going to log console log here to make sure that I'm calling animation. So let's see. Sweet, calling animation. Looks like animation is set up correctly. So if I click, I'm still seeing whatever I was seeing. Okay, now in this animate function, what I want to do is I already have drawn the circle X and at this coordinate X and Y. I just want to use that X and Y to move the circle a little bit. So I'm going to move my X and Y outside so I can have access to it. And then I'm going to set it up at like a random number anywhere in Canvas, just to kind of set it up. Math random and height. And then in my animate function, what I want to do is I actually want to like move the circle a little bit. So I'll create an update function, which will help me move the circle. And so what I want to do is I just want to move my X and Y. So I'm going to give my X is equal to X plus, I can give it a speed 50, and I'm going to define my speed here. Speed X is equal to, let's give it a random speed as well, times 5. Times 5. Okay. I'll update X here and I'll update Y here, speed Y. And right now I have like global variables going on. That's a code smell, but don't worry about it. We'll come back to this. Okay, so I want to update in my animate function. What I want to do is I basically want to do this. I want to update my X and Y. So I'm going to call my update function in my animate loop, which is update here. And then it just increases X. And after I've increased X, I also want to draw it. And for drawing, I think it was accepting X and Y. So I'm going to pass X and Y here. Because I've already updated X and Y, this should actually move. So you see it's actually moving. Now it's not moving when I'm clicking. It's just like randomly doing it because I have a handle draw circle, which is actually creating the circle at the point that I click, but it's not moving it. So what I can do is I'll initialize A and B here. There we go. We've got moving circles now. Cool. I'll also make sure that I'm not missing anything. And then if I click, am I still seeing it? No, I have to uncomment this out. Okay, cool. And I'll move this up here. There we go. So now our circle is actually moving. And if I click, oh, it's still not moving at click. So let me see what I'm missing. I think it's missing when I'm drawing, it's missing X and Y. Let me check my cheat sheet. We've got begin path, arc, stroke style. And on update, I'm increasing this, X and Y. Oh, my A and B is coming. Oh, okay, so this needs to be updated. X is this, and Y is this. And then I'm drawing at X and Y. There we go. Cool. Okay, so we've got circles that are moving across the screen. They're kind of creating streaks like this, but we actually just want the circle to move instead of creating a streak. And so for that, what we can do is every time we create a new, or every time we update the circle, we can remove the one that we had previously drawn in the previous animation frame. And to clear the canvas, basically, what we can do is context.clearRect, and that accepts the dimensions of the rectangle which we want to clear. For us, it's going to be our entire canvas. So we'll give 0, 0, which is the starting point at the top, and the canvas width and canvas height. Okay, so now when I click, I'll see circles and there's no streaks. Perfect. At this point, I'm creating circles and they're moving, so they're animating and it looks good. But they are kind of going down, but I want my bubbles to go up. So for that, what I can do is, remember in my animate function, I had y equals y plus speed y. So that actually increases the y and it actually goes down. So instead of that, let's add minus and it'll start going up. There we go. So now our circles are going up. We kind of want it to look like bubbles. So let's change the background and the color of this circle a little bit. We added background in CSS, so why don't we change it here? I think I had a nice background color somewhere written here. I'm going to copy this background color. This is a nice blue color. And our circles are also looking red, so let's change that. We gave a stroke style of red here, and let's change it to white. Let color equals white. And I'm going to rename this variable to color. Oh, we've got white circles now. Kind of looks like bubbles, almost getting there. Okay, I think it's looking good so far, but we only see like one bubble-ish on the page. So how can we fix that? Basically, what we need to do is every time we click, we're actually creating just the one circle. what we want to do is every time we click, we want to create multiple circles. And so for that, we're actually going to use JavaScript's object-oriented programming. Basically, what we can do is every time we click, we want to create multiple of these handle draw circles and these draws, and we want to update them as well. So this is a good point to kind of introduce classes. And well, because I'm running short of time, I'm going to go faster now. So what I can do is I want to create a class particle. You can name it whatever you want. But the idea here is that whatever we were doing before in draw and update and setting up and these variables, we want to move them inside our class particle. So I'm going to do that here. Move my draw function inside particle. I can remember how to do object-oriented programming. There. And then I had my update function. I'll move this inside as well. Okay. And one thing that I'm missing is constructor. So I'll have that here. Constructor. Now, if you remember, we have in our draw function, we were accepting X and Y parameters. And so basically what we can do is we can, every time we create a particle, we can provide an X and Y, which we'll call the draw function. So we don't need to provide X and Y in the draw function. Rather, we can move it to our constructor. So we'll set up our variables here. This.x is X. This.y is Y. And we'll also update our arc method. We have a constant radius here, so why don't we move it out and move it into our class as into our constructor as well. We can give it a constant radius, or we can also randomize the radius here. So let's give it a random between 0 to 50. And we had some variables here, so we'll move them out in our constructor as well. So the start color is white. We have speed as well, so let's move that inside as well. And now we don't need these anymore. Make sure they have this. And we need to provide a radius here. This color here. Also update this.x here, this.x here, this.speed, this.y, this.y, this.speedy. Okay, let's make sure everything's looking good. There's no errors. Make sure open our console to see if there's any errors. Something is broken, unexpected token somewhere. Let's clear up everything. Some problem here maybe. Is this outside my class? Oh, update needs this. There we go. Is it looking cool? It's looking good. Great. We're not creating any circles yet because we actually moved our functions inside the class. So now let's actually create a particle every time we click. In our handle draw circle, we were doing a draw of X and Y at the point X and Y. Now, instead of just calling draw, we actually need to create a particle. So we can do const particle equals new particle at the position X and Y. And I think our X and Y was not defined earlier. So let's give it X. Let's actually keep this. And we are creating a particle at X and Y. And then instead of calling draw X and Y, we want to call particle.draw. We don't need to provide X and Y anymore because our constructor already takes care of it. Okay, is there any error? Draw is not defined, right? Don't care about this right now. Don't care about update right now. So we can remove these. And so what I want to do is now when I click, I should still be able to see a particle. So I'm calling my animation, but I'm not seeing my particle. So let's see what's going on. handle draw circle, event, xy, new particle, particle dot draw, which is here. And let's make sure that I'm calling a console log here. Drawing. And console here, clear. Oh, too many console logs. Okay, it's drawing, but I can't see it. I think the problem is because I'm clearing my rectangle. So let's remove that. There. Cool. So particles are still showing on the canvas, which is great. Okay, now I'm still creating just the one particle every time I click. So we can fix that by actually creating a for loop here every time we click and maybe drawing like a few particles. One thing that you'll also note is that whenever I resize, it actually does not resize according to the window. And for that, there is a simple fix here. You can actually add an event listener of resize and basically do the same thing that we did here, canvas dot width equals window dot inner width, because window has now changed. So if you're interested, you can do that. All right, so we are just creating one particle here. Now actually, let's create a few particles every time we click. So for that, we already have a particle class. All we need to do is create an event loop. And I'm going to cheat a little bit and copy my event loop here. But first, actually, what we need to do is, because we care about the update, in update, actually, we care about the position X and Y. And for each particle, we actually need to draw them and move them. We're going to set up an array, which will keep track of every article that we have on the page. So particles array, all I'm going to do is every time I create a particle, I'm actually going to push my particle in that array. So particles array dot push particle. And now I'm going to cheat a little bit and create a for loop here, where all I'm going to do is basically the thing I was doing before, except now I'm going to create at least 20 particles and push them in my array. So what will that do is it'll create multiple circles on the page. I'm just not drawing them right now. And for that, what I can do is move them to my animation function. So in my animation function, I wanted to paint the circle, but I also wanted to move the circle. And I have access to all of the particles that I've created when I clicked, because I've got particles array here. So what I can do is now I can go through each element in the particles array, each particle in the particles array, and draw them and update them. So that will draw them. I'll have a particle start array for each loop. For each particle, I'll draw the particle and I'll update the particle. So now when I click, I've got particles going everywhere. It's kind of crazy right now because I removed my clear rect. So let's bring that back in. Sweet. I've got bubbles going everywhere now. Okay, so let's recap what we did. We used HTML's canvas element to create a canvas element that looks very simple. Then I used JavaScript to get access to the canvas context. And then I'm using any API on context to actually create the circle. The first API that I used was context.arc, which helps me create a circle. And I'm initializing the this.x and this.y to be the position where I clicked using my click handler. And in my click handler, what I've done is created a particles array and just push every particle to that array. And that allows me to have access to the particles during my animate function. And in my animate function, I'm clearing the rectangle, whatever there was before on the canvas. And then I'm using every particle in the particles array to draw and to update. And when I click, I've got bubbles going everywhere on the screen. Now there's a bunch of things you can do from here. You can change the color of this. We're giving it a white color. You can use RGBA, or you can use hue colors to change the color of this. You can actually fill in the colors in the bubbles as well. So we have a stroke style provided here at the start color. You can also have a fill style here of this dot color, which is white again. And then with stroke, you can also do fill. And so now when I click, I'll have actually solid circles going on the screen. You can also randomize this color because we're using, I think we're just using a string. Instead of using a string, if you use RGBA and increase the value of RGBA, or you can use hue as well, and increase the value of that hue a little bit on every animation frame. You can also randomize the colors as well. Now, in our bubbles, this is a challenge for you if you're following this. This looks like it's kind of transparent color. It looks very similar to what we have so far. Like we've got a solid color, but in our bubbles, we have this like semi-transparent color. I want you to think about how you can do that. And I'm going to give you a hint. So what we're going to use is canvas radial gradient. So using this method, create radial gradient. Here's a challenge for you. Use this method, create radial gradient, to make it look kind of like that. So if you look at this a little bit, it's just another hint is it has kind of like a radial gradient going inside. It starts from white and then goes into blue. So that's your step up challenge. Okay, to recap, what we did was we used the canvas element, we created a context, we used an event handler to create a circle, which is context.arc method at point X and Y. And that created one circle. And to create multiple circles, we actually created a class called particles, which sets up our X and Y and the radius of the circle. And we are giving it random radius. We can set up colors as well. And then every time we click, we are actually creating multiple particles. You can create any number of particles you want. And we're pushing all of the particles to particles array so that we can have access to these particles in the animate function. And in the animate function, we're actually just drawing the particle again because we have updated the X and Y. And we're updating the X and Y a little bit so that they actually look like they're moving. And we can fill in the colors of the circles by using stroke style and fill style. Stroke style is for the border and fill style is for the solid color. And a step up challenge for you is to use fill style and create a radial gradient to make them look like bubbles. And that's all I have for you. So if you like tutorials like this, you would also enjoy tutorials that I'll be putting up on my YouTube channel, which is over here. Thank you so much for watching.
Hey, that was so. I didn't. It exceeded all of my expectations. This is absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Awesome. Like it's kind of a workshop as well with people following along with you and the challenges and so on. Thank you so much, Shruti. That was amazing. Really.
Yes,
I
awesome.
I actually liked it so much that I went on Twitter and I told everyone how and Blue Sky and told everyone how impressed I was because I mean there's no slides and it's all live code. That's a
Yeah.
very
I'm
wow.
surprised like I didn't have any hiccups because there's always hiccups during live code.
Yeah, how do you feel about that? Is it more of an adrenaline kick with all the live coding?
I mean, it feels like a kick when there is no hiccup. Otherwise, it's just like, ah.
Yeah, awesome. Great. Well, we have some questions. If you have a few minutes to stick with us and answer some. Um, the main question here. Well, okay, there's really two questions. We'll see if we'd invite you to add more to the chat while we ask. But so first question: will the update and draw keep on working in the background after it has exited from the stage? If so, hot stop that process if the bubble goes out of window. Okay, I don't know the second part what that means, but I guess the question is: will the update and draw functions keep running in the background even after the bubble has exited the canvas state?
Oh, great question. Actually, yeah. So I think I know what they mean by the the second part of that as well. Yeah, it actually like because the x and y of every particle keeps increasing, it just like keeps going beyond screens. And so one thing that we can do, which I didn't get time to do here, is when we update, we're actually just going like this dot x is like whatever the x is right now, and then the speed of x. So there, what you can do is add a bound so that if you are outside the window dot whatever, you can either remove it from the particles array, or you can like move it back into the canvas, so you can have like bubbles going everywhere but just not out of the screen. So yeah,
Awesome.
good point.
Awesome. I also imagine like this DVD. You remember the DVD screen with the DVD logo kind of just like bouncing off?
Yeah,
That's
yeah, it
probably
goes like
something.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's probably something you could also do with the bubbles. I wish whenever I blow bubbles they bounce. I always try to blow these bouncy bubbles. Just make it come true in Canvas. Awesome. I understand your answer. It helps me understand. So I assume that the person who asked them also gets it. Second question is, I love this. It's just two words: classes. Why? um, but also, there's a sub question which says, how do we do the same thing, or can we do the same thing, just using functions, like some type of factory that it's called, I don't know, create particle, and it just returns you like an object that has those methods on it.
Yeah, totally. Like we definitely don't need to use classes. I just wanted to show another way of like using the functions that we created into class so that it's easier to like keep track of them. What you can do is create particle as well. Like we had particles array, instead of creating like a new particle object, you can maybe like create an object and you can store its x and y. Instead of having like this dot x, you can have a particle object x and y and just like access that particle objects x and y. And so in your particles array, you, instead of having particles object, you will have like objects that have x and y, and you just like access them. So totally possible to do without classes as well.
Awesome. Hey, does this I assume it does, but I'm just curious for the rest of us, does this also work then on like mobile devices? Do the clicks become tap events?
Yeah, they become tap events.
Nice. Cool. Well, we have our last question. Again, I would invite people, if you want to ask more, feel free to add them. Oh, look, there is one. Awesome. I guess this is now the second to last question. Someone's asking, where can I find the completed code? So is this open
Oh
source? Is
yeah,
there a GitHub repo?
good question. Let me share the link here, and maybe folks can share
Oh, nice.
in
It's
the
a
chat,
code
because
factory.
I think I have the veto closed, but yeah, I share it in the private chat.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, we'll get those to the people. Yeah, link incoming. All right, and that brings us then to the last question. I hear this beaten like a regular drum. I hear this like a broken record. Every time somebody talks about Canvas, what shortly follows is someone asking a question about accessibility. So
Of that
how
question.
yeah, yeah. So I feel like I don't even need to ask the question because you probably get it a lot. I'll just leave you with it. So accessibility in this context, if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, like Canvas and accessibility is actually a challenge. And so one of the things that comes as a caveat with Canvas is like whatever you're putting in the canvas, you kind of want to give a context to screen readers, because anything that's in the canvas, because it's created with JavaScript, the screen readers have no idea, or like any accessibility tool has no idea what's going on inside the canvas. So if you remember, I created the canvas element and then I put like some fallback text. So what you want to do is whatever you're putting inside the canvas with JavaScript, you kind of want to give a context to the reader, what is going on within that like fallback text. You can also use ARIA attributes on top of canvas elements as well, like ARIA label that gives context on like what's going on. But yeah, one thing that you do have to keep in mind is like what, because you're using JavaScript to create elements on the go, or like create animations on the go, or whatever you're going to be creating, uh, nothing inside the canvas rendering is actually going to be accessible to canvas, to screen readers. So one of the caveats there is like, for example, if you want to use canvas to like display text, don't do that. It's kind of considered as not a best practice. Instead, you would want to use like a semantic HTML element to display text, because anything inside canvas will not be readable by screen readers.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That was another like accessibility lightning talk in the middle of the Q&A. Appreciate that. So good. Well, that's all the questions we have. Thank you again. Hey, everybody, give it up at home for Shruti. That was a really good talk. Really awesome. It was a, I was watching you live code and I was like, oh my gosh, she's a mad woman. Just kind of like no slides, no slides. Who does that? Awesome, awesome.